from a situation where, to protect the health system, we've got everybody locked down. We're going to move to a situation where, to protect the health system, we're going to lock out people who are not vaccinated and can be. If you're making the choice not to get vaccinated, then you're making the wrong choice. You're making the wrong choice. And for safety's sake, and back to that point about how much work our nurses have to do, as this becomes absolutely a pandemic of the unvaccinated and we open everything up, it's not going to be safe for people who are not vaccinated to be roaming around the place spreading the virus. That's what they'll be doing. So there's every reason to get vaccinated. And there are appointments available, and there'll be even more appointments available throughout September, October, November. Let's get to those thresholds as fast as we possibly can. But yes, there's going to be a vaccinated economy, and you get to participate in that if you are vaccinated. Now, that's not right now because, of course, there's many more people who want to get vaccinated than we actually can get through the system. But we're going to get to a point where everybody who can get vaccinated will have been offered the chance to do so. And we are not going to have a situation, well, at least not in Victoria, where we lock the whole place down to protect people who won't protect themselves. Go and get vaccinated. There's 11,000 AZ appointments available this week, 2,000 Pfizer appointments available this week. We'll have more to say with those additional stocks coming in from overseas, but I want to run that down to zero so there are no more AstraZeneca appointments, hopefully very soon, and we can order more and we can keep pushing that. I just again remind people, the Prime Minister has written to everybody who's 60 and over and indicated to them that you are eligible for AstraZeneca, and if you want Pfizer, then you will be in the queue behind everyone else. That is to say, you'll be in the queue behind 12-year-olds because they can only get Pfizer. That is...
Riot police and anti-lockdown protesters are tonight still playing a game of cat and mouse in two of this country's biggest cities. As these pictures from Melbourne and Sydney show, it was either locked down or be locked up. Clashes erupting with protesters and running battles with police. The demonstrations came on a day Victoria's daily cases jumped by more than 60 and New South Wales pushed past 800. Here's our Australia correspondent Andrew McFarlane.
Tensions running high on the streets of Sydney as police confront anti-lockdown demonstrators once again swarming the CBD. Those who managed to make it into the city, past blocked roads and checkpoints, were met by 1,400 officers who didn't hesitate to cuff the rule breakers.
You just said I'm breaching the health order. Why are you arresting me?
Mayhem on the streets of Melbourne too. The central city overrun with protesters, defying stay-at-home orders and clashing with police. Officers appearing to be overwhelmed by the sheer number of people.
This is a crime against humanity.
With not a face mask in sight, it's feared these protests are spreading Delta as well as misinformation. But the situation is deadly serious.
This virus has made its way from Sydney to New Zealand, for heaven's sake. We therefore shouldn't be having any of these debates.
Sydney's daily case numbers have reached a frightening record.
It's 825 in the community, with at least 58 of those infectious during the entire time.
Australia's worst day of the pandemic so far. Astoundingly, this 27-year-old Sydney-sider who's COVID positive has refused to isolate and is now on the run from police. It's feared he's already spread the virus to more unsuspecting residents.
But there are those amongst us who don't seem to give a damn. They are out attending parties. They are out doing what they've been told not to do. They're facilitating the spread of the virus. And I would just say to them, you are ransoming our future.
And with today's protest action, a future of rising COVID cases here looks almost certain.
And Andrew joins us now from Sydney. Tēnā koe, Andrew. The ever-increasing New South Wales outbreak is putting massive pressure on the state's hospitals.
Good evening, Wendy. That's certainly true. There are currently 516 people in hospitals across New South Wales at the moment, and 85 of them are in intensive care. Now, it has to be said, New South Wales is currently in uncharted waters. Today's case numbers is a pandemic record, not just for the state, but for all of Australia.
Back in
place, especially with reopening and people going back to pubs and stuff? Because our exposure sites still, will they be put back in place to be listed once we are reopening? Because they're not at the moment.
We will be looking at what contact tracing looks like in the new world order. And yes, it will be pubs and clubs and other things if we have a positive case there. Our response may be different if we know that people are fully vaccinated. So we're working through a number of those issues, but we will have to reflect and learn.
The metric system. From Beijing to Buenos Aires, from Lusaka to London, the people of the world have been forced to measure their environment in millimeters and kilograms. The United States is the only major country that's resisted, but we have no reason to be ashamed for using feet and pounds. So says New Criterion editor James Panaro. We spoke with him recently.
I'm joining you tonight as an anti-metrite. I'm taking a stand against the metric system, the original system of global revolution and new world orders.
God bless you. That's exactly what it is. Esperanto died, but the metric system continues, this weird, utopian, inelegant, creepy system that we alone have resisted.
Through July, when Canberra was a COVID-free oasis,
Where was the location?
its contact tracing team was busy at work assisting New South Wales with the rapidly escalating Delta outbreak in Sydney.
We don't know the suburbs so well in Sydney, so a lot of our people that were doing the interviews did comment that it's very, very challenging.
I have about 6 more contacts to do at the moment.
Okay. Behind all the interstate bickering that has dominated the politics of this pandemic, there has been a quiet, effective layer of interstate cooperation on health resources, like vital contact tracing.
Last year we sent some of our staff down to Victoria. I think it was in about July last year when they had their first sort of outbreak down there. Everyone's been open to calling in that help.
But it's a fragile web, and almost like in bushfire season, the capacity to offer help depends on one's own state not being ablaze.
It's the Canberra club that's led to a COVID cluster.
When the virus finally arrived in the capital a few weeks ago, Rebecca Hundy had no choice but to pull her team back.
It was pretty much immediate. It was all hands on deck from that first moment. We just pulled all of our own resources in to focus on that case.
The rest of the country might just see Canberra as the home of the federal parliament, some as a population of fat cat public servants and an affluent middle class. But despite its reputation, when COVID arrived in the city after it was virus-free for a year, Chief Minister Andrew Barr saw the national capital rapidly tick almost every unwanted box on the COVID bingo card.
Vulnerable communities, public housing, community housing, homelessness, shelters, people who are sleeping rough becoming infected.
The detection of COVID in just 2 Canberra schools made 20,000 people, or close to 5% of the entire population, close contacts who had to go into quarantine, not just lockdown. Finding them was a lot easier, but it still had a massive impact on the city.
And that impacted on frontline health workers, it impacted on policing, it impacted on our emergency services agency and on government.